Hi book friends, it's Michelle here, and today I am going to be doing a pretty chatty video as I have 11 books to tell you about that I read in the month of April. So please settle in, grab a beverage, whatever you like to enjoy, and I will tell you about everything I read in the past month. First off, I picked up a book by an author that I had previously DNF'd. I thought I'm going to give her a second shot and see how it goes. I did get this book from the thrift store. I'm talking about Unsheltered by Barbara Kingsolver. In this book, we're following a family. The wife's name is Willa, and in the opening scene, she's walking through their New Jersey home, which is a heritage home. It's very old. She's walking through with an inspector, contractor who's inspecting the place. He discovers that there are a ton of foundational problems with the house, and he advises that any kind of repairs that they need to get done in order to remain living there safely will cost them a bucket load of money. So Willa and her husband, I forget his name, are kind of shocked at the price. Her husband is working as a professor at one of the universities, and she has been laid off from her job. So she's a reporter, I believe, a journalist. Anyhow, so they're having money struggles, and then they get this news that their house is falling apart around them, and so they're faced with that. Then another turn of events that's really tragic. Their son, who lives in Boston and is married with a young little baby who's only a few months old, his wife commits suicide. So Willa and her husband are faced with that. They rally around their son and offer to help take care of his baby while he's trying to piece his life back together. So she's got a lot on her plate. Also, on top of all of that, her father-in-law, who has many health issues, is living with them. They're taking care of him. They can't afford for him to live in a long-term care place, so she's driving him back and forth to doctor appointments, etc., etc. Now, the second timeline that we follow in this book takes place where we're following the residents of the same house in the 1800s, the original family who lived in the very same house, their struggles, and they're faced with a lot of kind of similar issues, even though, that was over 100 years ago or whatever. So yeah, that's interesting. Where this book where I had a problem with it though, I put a tab where I stopped reading it. I needed a break. It got to a point where it was really, really heavy. And then there was a scene with Willa and a student of her husband's at the university. He's very attractive, her husband, and he's got a lot of young girls that are kind of flirty with him and stuff. Anyway, one day one of his students randomly shows up at Willa's home at 5 a.m, claiming to need help with an assignment or something, and it was a really weird scene as Willa didn't send her away. She let her come in the house, poured her some coffee, and had her sit down in the kitchen, and they had a weird, awkward conversation. And yeah, so I don't know. It seemed like a really random thing to put in the book at that point, and I don't know where the story was going. The action kind of slowed down for me. It got, like I said, the one silly scene, and then it was kind of boring, so I kind of dropped off. I might come back to it. I do really enjoy her writing, and I love the scenes with the father-in-law, Nick, and Willa. They have some great dialogue, great banter. So yeah, I might pick this up again. I can't say that I'll, never look at it again. I might try and read the rest of it since I'm over halfway done. So yeah, that was my first book, and like I said, got it to about the 250 page mark and abandoned ship. Next one I read was a library book. I had this book on hold for many months as it was a Booker Prize finalist, I believe. And the book I'm talking about is called Stoneyard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. This was a very quick read. I think it's only about 200 pages. It's not a really long book. And the writing is very Let's see. It's a very slow-paced book, let's put it that way. In this book, it's set in Australia, in the middle of nowhere, at this, what they call a nunnery. There's a church, and there are little residences that tourists or people can go stay at. It's accommodations for just anybody that they rent out, I suppose. So we're following this woman as she goes there to kind of reflect on her life and make a big life change, I guess you could say. It's mainly all about her and her past and her childhood. It's a very kind of introspective read, and there are 3 main events that happen to her at this place while she's staying there. There's a mouse infestation, which is an ongoing battle that she helps, you know, when she's staying there, but she's also helping them with the chores and cleaning and cooking and whatever else they're doing around there. So it gets infested with mice, so they have that to deal with. Then one of the sisters who used to live there went on a mission to some foreign country. She was killed, so they're also returning her body to this place for burial, etc. And then she also encounters this lady from her past who shows up at this place, who is a sister, a nun, and it's someone that our main character went to college with, I believe. Anyway, if you enjoy a good plot, you'll absolutely hate this book because there's not much beyond that, not much happens. If you enjoy a really slow-paced, kind of more, I don't even know what to call it, introspective, I guess is the best word. You might enjoy it. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. It just wasn't for me, not my kind of book. Another reason why I don't often pick books based on book prizes and popularity and stuff. Anyway, I gave it a shot because, like I said, I had it on hold for months and months at the library, and I thought, okay, it's going to be a quick read. I'll just read it and be done with it. Next up, I read a book by an author I love, who I had previously read her book, Serious Blooms at Night, and absolutely loved it. This one is called Moving Forward Sideways Like a Crab, and the author is Shani Mootoo. This book, we are following a younger man in his 30s. His name is Jonathan, and he has recently reestablished a relationship with his estranged father, who has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. So the story goes between Trinidad, where his father is originally from, and Toronto, where he's currently living. So the father, Sydney, is also interesting in that he has transitioned from a female to a male. So Jonathan has known Sydney both as his mother, and now he's knowing him as his father. The transition isn't what made them estranged from each other. A bunch of series of events happened, and now Jonathan has the opportunity to take care of his dad and to really get to know him and listen to his life story. Sydney wants to completely open up to his son and tell him everything he ever wanted to know about him while he still has time. This is a thoughtful, thought-provoking, complicated story about the relationship between these two characters, as well as the Trinidadian culture, what it's like to be an immigrant. It was really interesting. The only thing is that it kind of slowed down toward the end. When you know a character is terminally ill and that the end is coming, there are no surprises. And I'm not going to lie, this is a very heavy, very depressing read. The subject matter alone, but it is beautiful in the conversations they have and, you know, the bonding of the two characters that are getting closer and closer toward the end of Sydney's life, etc. So yeah, there's a lot of really heartfelt moments, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend this widely, just because, like I said, the subject matter is a real heavy book. As lovely as the writing is, I gave this one about a 2.5 out of 5 stars. So yeah, I'm glad I read it. Not her best work, but I still intend to read Shani Mootoo's backlist because I think she is a fabulous writer. So yeah, moving forward sideways like a crab. Next up, I read a book that I've been meaning to get to for the longest time. That book is Rouge by Mona Awad. This book is a trip, a total mind bender. We're following a girl named Belle who has just lost her mother, Noelle. She's passed away. So Belle is going to her mother's house in California on the coast. It sounds beautiful. The setting is lush and by the ocean, and she soon discovers that her mother was involved in this spa, going for regular treatments at this place that is very much like a cult. Weird things happen, such as Belle tries on a pair of her mother's shoes, and the shoes walk her down toward this place that's not far from the ocean. It's called the Maison de Méduse or something like that. Anyway, she walks into this place, and they all seem to know who she is. And they have a big tank of jellyfish in the entryway. It's all black and red, and chandeliers and people wearing masks and talking in hushed tone. The whole thing is very strange. What I love about the Mona Awad stories is that she just puts you right in the story. There's no long setup, nothing like that. You are just thrown right in. We follow Belle as she's trying to navigate her grief and her loss and get answers from this weird place that she started going to on a regular basis. Her mother also had this handyman that's been coming to her house, and he's obsessed with washing windows and stuff like that. And Belle suspects that this guy and her mother were sleeping together. So there's that. As the more you read in this book, the more of an unreliable narrator Belle becomes. It's obvious she's got something going on mentally, and you don't know what that is. And as the story progresses, it gets weirder and weirder, and all kind of dark things happen, which I love. And it's very creepy, very atmospheric. For me, though, it kind of got boring in the middle part, towards the ending. Not much was happening, and I was so anticipating this wild and crazy conclusion of this story. I have to say I was a little bit let down, but I still really enjoyed this. It was a really fast-paced, kind of a thrill ride, weird fever dream type of book. It feels like a hallucination that you're going through yourself as you're reading it. It feels like I felt like I was being hypnotized by this crazy cult myself. So if you're into that kind of thing, check it out. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. It was really good. I liked it. Next up, I read a thriller by Will Dean called The Chamber. This book, we're following a female diver who goes with this crew into a really deep ocean submersible. And it's not a submarine, it's a pod where this crew of divers are living for months and months and months. There's an illustration that shows you what this place is like. There's also a glossary of terms in the front of the book because it's quite technically heavy at first, which I enjoyed. For me, I really liked hearing about how these divers prepare, what's involved in going down and into the ocean floor. What they're doing is they're working with the oil pipelines, like repairs and just checking to make sure everything's working properly at the bottom of the sea. So we're following this woman and her 4 other male crew members on this expedition, and they start dying one by one. She's trying to figure out what is going on. They can't take them back up because of the pressurization. For some reason, the bodies have to stay with them in this little chamber. Hence the chamber. So yeah, people start dying. What I didn't like about it, though, it gets pretty predictable towards the end. And like I said, ending was less than stellar. So that kind of dropped off for me. But the parts that are about the actual divers themselves and their job, I found super interesting. The science, everything involved with how they prepare to do this job was really good to me. I was disappointed. I loved Will Dean's book, the last one, about that woman on the cruise ship. Loved that book. This one, not so much. It was a disappointment. So I didn't DNF it. I read it, but I only gave it about 2 stars out of 5. Oh well. Next up, I read another book. Did I read another? That is quite popular, called Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaghy. Now this book, we are following a family on a deserted island just off the coast of Antarctica. This is an environmental thriller kind of a book. It's very dark. The atmosphere is fantastic. Like, it's a father, his 2 sons, and his daughter. Their mother has passed away, but they're on this island and they're taking care of these seed vaults where all the world's seed storage supply is housed. And also, with the rising sea levels, their island is slowly disappearing. They're only on this island for a brief period of time, 7 weeks. So they're almost at the end of their tenure here, the work that they were doing at this. It's like a research facility. One day, a random woman washes up on shore. Her ship wrecks against the rocks. They take this woman in, get her back to health again, and she's got a lot of secrets. She's coming there to look for her husband, who was assigned to work at this place, and she never heard from him again. So there's a mystery at the heart of this. There's murder, there's suspense, there's environmental intrigue. What I loved about this book is that the more you read, the less you trust these people. Each character gets their own chapter as you go, and the story gets more twisted the more you read into it. I thought this was fabulous. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaghy. Fantastic book. Next one I read was another one I had gotten from my library. I had seen it on another booktuber's channel and I cannot remember. I apologize. If I remember, I'll put it in the description. Anyway, the book I'm talking about is Hurricane Girl by Marcy Dermansky. I had never heard of this book before, but wow. So we're following the character named Allison. Allison has just fled her West Coast and a bad relationship she was in, and she has traveled all the way across the country to North Carolina, where she was able to purchase a small house on the ocean, close to the shore. Like, beautiful little character home. She's really proud of herself for this accomplishment of getting disentangled from the relationship and having enough money saved up to be able to buy herself this new home and a fresh start. She's at her house for only a week and a half, and this hurricane hits, demolishes her house completely. She's left destitute and devastated. So after this enormous disaster, a news crew arrives to interview her, being that she's one of the survivors of this hurricane. And, you know, it's for the nightly news, so she's kind of in shock still, but she agrees to the interview. It's a cameraman and a journalist that are there. So that's fine. So later on in the day, she's still reeling. She goes to a bar. She's just going out for a couple drinks and try and relax. And she comes across the cameraman from earlier in the day who had interviewed her. They get to talking. They keep drinking. Next thing you know, she ends up at his house. Make a long story short, she spends the night with this guy that she doesn't know from a hole in the ground. And the next morning, his attitude towards her has changed. They haven't slept together. They did not have sex. She refused him and she just passed out. But the next morning, he starts acting strangely. He starts telling her that he's going to make her breakfast and, giving her fruit to eat and stuff. And she's like, I apologize, but I really am not hungry. I need to go and get my life together. I have to go buy a charger for my phone. My phone's dead, blah, blah, blah. He won't accept no for an answer. Finally, she says, no, really, I have to go. She goes to leave. This man grabs a flower vase, a glass one, and smashes it over her head. So Allison has glass raining down. She's got blood. She completely loses consciousness. So we follow her story. This is the beginning of the book. This is how it begins. This poor woman, we follow her journey back to health, her love life. She falls in love, and she again is faced with having to kind of start all over again. As the story goes, though, we find that our main character, Allison, is not all that she seems, not what she appears to be. We don't know if this is due to the blow to the head that she suffered or if she has always had mental health issues, but she becomes, again, more and more unhinged the further that you go into the book. And this crazy story evolves into a revenge story that takes really interesting twists and turns. I did not know what was going to happen at the end of the book. I could not wait to see. It's a short little book. It's another one that's, just over 200 pages or something like that. I read it in one sitting. It was absolutely fantastic. If you like a weird, unhinged main character and a creepy, unusual plot where you don't know what's going to happen next and you cannot guess, check out Hurricane Girl by Marcy Dermansky. You won't be sorry. It is amazing. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Next book I read that was really great, I really loved it, was a short story collection called Peacocks of Instagram. This book is by Deepa Rajagopalan. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. In this story, all of these short stories are interconnected. They are all focused on Indian people living in Canada and the United States. First story, we're following a young girl who is making jewelry out of peacock feathers. She's got an online store and she uses Instagram to promote her work. So we're following her journey and her starting up her business, etc. And what I liked about this is that each story, you have a character from the previous one. And you move from story to story. They're so well written. They're very short. They're only about 4 pages long each, 4 or 5 pages, but fantastic writing, fantastic characters. My favorite story in here is called Driving Lessons, in which a girl has moved to Los Angeles and she's faced with the real struggle of trying to navigate the freeways, trying to not get lost, she's trying to get her driver's license at the same time. So she's struggling. And I think, having a driver's license and knowing my way, how to commute everywhere is something that I can only speak for myself, but I totally take that for granted every day. So it's really interesting to me to read about, something that nobody really talks about. Like the stories in here were really unique and just little vignettes of life that either go unseen or just pass by without people really noticing them. So I love that. I love that this author brought attention to those stories, and it was a great read, 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read probably my very favorite book of them all. It's called The Riveter by Wang. This left me thinking about it long after I stopped reading it. Now, I have to preface this by saying that I'm not a huge World War II fan, just because there's been so many books written about that era that I feel like oftentimes a lot of them are just rehashing the same story over and over. This was completely different than any other World War II story I've ever read. It is not only a historical fiction, in fact, I wouldn't actually define it as that. It could just as easily be called a romance book or a suspense thriller book, it's kind of one of those that really defies being categorized in any particular genre. It's just a good book. In this one, we're following a character named Josiah Chang. His father has passed away, and he had been previously working in the forestry industry in Vancouver with his dad. And so after this accident takes his dad's life, he doesn't really know what to do with himself. His mother passed away previously, so he's pretty much by himself. And as an immigrant in Canada back in the 1940s, you know, he's faced with a lot of kind of racial issues, and he's having a hard time finding a job. Finally, he does find a job at a shipyard where they're doing riveting of big steel plates on the warships that are being sent off. So he really enjoys this job. He's loving it. And one night, Josiah and a bunch of his buddies from work go out to this nightclub. And there he sees this woman on stage singing. He can't take his eyes off of her. Her name is Poppy. She, as it happens, also works at this same shipyard, only the women are segregated from the men. They work in their own separate area, so he's never met her at work, but he meets her at this club. Make a long story short, they fall in love. But what I liked is that even though it's kind of a love at first sight story, it's not like insta-love exactly. It's not done in a really corny or cheesy way. It's done in a really mature, kind of beautiful way. This whole relationship that unfolds between these two. So he's in love with her. They fall in love. He wants to marry her. Her dad comes to talk to him and tells him, you know, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want her to lose her citizenship by marrying you, etc., etc. So Josiah goes on a mission to prove to not only Poppy's dad that he's worthy of marrying her, but also to prove to himself that he can do it. What he wants to do is enlist in the military. He wants to go fight fascism more than anything, you know, for his own reasons and for, like I said, to prove himself to Poppy's dad as well as the larger society that he's capable and he's worthy of becoming a Canadian citizen. So he goes to enlist, but at that time in Vancouver, they weren't taking immigrants into the military because they didn't want them to have the expectation of gaining citizenship upon their return from duty. So he's faced with that, and he thinks, well, maybe if I try a different recruiting station at the other end of the country, if I go to Toronto, I might have better luck. So Poppy doesn't want him to go. She's upset. He leaves anyway. He tells her he's doing this for both of them and their future together. He goes to Toronto. He is able to enlist there. And he also signs up to become a paratrooper. As you can see, these look like jellyfish, but they're actually like guys jumping out of planes in parachutes. So the scenes of Josiah and his battalion and all his friends that he meets in the army training for this, well, he goes through basic training, but also the jumping out of the plane paratrooper training is incredible. I loved reading about that. And I'm not one for, you know, military stuff. I don't know a lot about but the way Jack Wang writes this, it's so easily consumable to anybody. You don't have to be a fan of wartime books or to know anything about the inner workings of the military or anything like that. The way it's written is so easy to consume. It's so interesting. He makes even the battle scenes. I think what it is that he only tells you what you need to know. Yes, there's some really tragic, horrible things that happen, but he doesn't go on and on and on about that. He doesn't fixate on the tragic elements. They're there when necessary, but it doesn't dominate the overarching story. Josiah's first mission upon making it through training is they're going to jump on the beach at Normandy. So they go to France and England. We follow him through those battles there. And like I said, yeah, absolutely fabulous. I love the story of what he goes through for his training, the people he meets, and as well as the ongoing love story at the heart of this between himself and Poppy. If you're a fan of romantic fiction or, like I said, historical, anything like that, there's a lot of action in here. It's not boring. Different parts of the book have focus on different things. It's a very fast read. I've tabbed some places, as you can see. I want to do a more in-depth review of this because it's just that great of a book 4.5. Like, I'm hovering between a 4 and 5 star. It's great. It's not quite the perfect book, but I loved it. I loved the ending. I loved the whole experience of reading it. It's just a fantastic story. So, The Riveter by Jack Chang. Check it out if you're interested. Yeah, I haven't seen anyone else talking about it. It just came out in 2025, so it's a brand new one. And I'm happy I read it. Lastly, oh no, this is not the last book. This is the penultimate book I read in April. This was a fantastic read for me. I'm talking about One by One by Freida McFadden. This is one of the most fun books I had all month. In this book, we are following 3 couples. We have Noah and Claire, who have been married for a long time. They've got a couple kids, and they're not really getting along so good. Then we have Jack and Michelle, who are friends of theirs. And we also have another friend of theirs named Lindsay, who has just started dating this guy, and she is kind of eager for all her friends to meet him. So what happens is they all decide to go on a trip together to this resort in the woods. And Claire and Noah say, hey, we'll drive our minivan. Everybody pile in. So they hit the road in the minivan. And Noah's driving, Claire's in the passenger seat, and we get Claire as our main narrator in this book. All she does is complain about her husband, and her parts were really entertaining to me. I loved reading Claire's parts because as much as she was complaining about him, we also find out that she's been having an affair with Jack, one of the other couples on the trip. So Jack and Claire have been carrying on, unbeknownst to Noah and Jack's wife, Michelle. Then we get to kind of know Lindsay and her boyfriend, Warner, who are along on the trip. And this Warner guy seems almost too good to be true. He's a doctor, and he's model good looking, and he's really charming and everything, and seems really smart. So everyone kind of, they're kind of getting to know him and feel him out, but they're not sure about this guy. So we get Claire's perspective telling the story, and then we also get the perspective of somebody called Anonymous. So all we don't know who this anonymous person is, except that they are one of the other people in the minivan on this trip. Lo and behold, they're making their way to this resort, and the van breaks down. Kaput. Won't start. They have no way to fix it. They're stranded in the middle of nowhere. So what do? They get out the paper map that the boyfriend of Lindsay happened to brought with him, and they start trying to find their way on foot to this resort. I love that trope. I love a trope of a car breakdown in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. It's creepy. And you just know, like, there's already tension among all these people in the van with the affair happening and Claire nonstop complaining about her husband and stuff. So, yeah. So they set out on foot. And what follows is a combination of horror as a couple of people get killed. And we don't know. I did not guess the ending. I guessed that the evil person was 2 different people, and I was wrong on both counts. So this hit all the marks for me as a thriller. Like, it was fast-paced, it was entertaining, it had great dialogue. The banter between the characters was really great. I love that. And yeah, kept me guessing till the end. So 4 stars out of 5 for One by One by Freida McFadden. Fantastic. And now the last book, the 11th book I read in April, is another thriller type book called The Silence in Her Eyes by Armando Lucas Correa. In this book, we are following a young protagonist named Leah. Leah's mother has recently died of cancer, and her father died previously, so she's living by herself. She's an orphan, but she's living in this apartment complex in New York City with 2 elderly ladies that she's befriended across the hall. And then she's got a family friend named Antonia who comes to help her clean and help her take care of herself in her apartment because Leah has a disability called achinotopsia, I believe, where it's motion blindness. She can see, but the moment that something moves, somebody starts to talk or something like that, she is blind. She cannot see. So she can only see things when they are perfectly still. What happens is, Leah's going about her business. She goes to a doctor, to a therapist that's helping her work through her issues. And one day they get a new neighbor in the apartment complex, a woman named Alice, who is trying to escape from her abusive husband. Now, because Leah has her sense of sight is depleted, but her other senses are heightened to a crazy degree. She can smell things that, a dog can't detect, kind of thing. Like she can smell people and everything they have for lunch or whatever, what kind of soap they use. Like she can also hear things really, really acutely. So involuntarily, she starts to hear and smell things coming from Alice's apartment. So she doesn't want to know what's going on necessarily, but she can't help it because her senses enable her to find out everything that she may or may not want to know about Alice's relationship with her husband. This book was crazy. All these crazy things happen. It's one of those where you just get thrown right in and it goes from there. We're following Leah as she goes about her days and goes to her doctor's appointments. And she becomes more and more unreliable of a narrator the more you read. And you start to doubt every character in here. Even Antonia. Antonia is the elderly friend of her mother's who's coming to help her. She's like a surrogate mother to Leah. And I even had doubts about her at one point. So yeah, I'm not going to say anything more and spoil it, but it was really suspenseful, really atmospheric, and it did have a surprise ending. So I really enjoyed this one. I don't feel like it's a 4-star or a 5-star read, so it's a 3, but it was really good. I really enjoyed this one. And yeah, very suspenseful. The one thing I will say also is that I believe this is a translation from the Spanish, but I think this author himself translated it because there's no mention of any other person that was the translator. So yeah, as far as I can tell, he did. Yeah, great story, really wild story. And at one point though, you do have to kind of suspend your disbelief because it's one where she does all these things and you think, why would you do that? That makes no sense whatsoever. So that kind of diminished it a little bit for me. But otherwise, I think a lot of people would really like this one if you like a thriller. So The Silence in Her Eyes by Armando Lucas Correa. That's the last thing I read. And thanks for watching. If you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it. Let me know if you read any of these books. I'd love to hear your opinions about them. And I hope you had a great reading month as well. Take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.